The luminescence of the Eldoria Prime Council chamber was always muted, a deliberate choice to amplify the gravity of its proceedings. Luminescent fungi, cultivated for millennia within the chamber's cavernous dome, cast a pallid, shifting glow upon the polished obsidian floor, reflecting the anxious faces of the delegates. The air, typically thick with the subtle hum of ancient thought amplifiers and the scent of processed ozone, was now permeated by a primal tang of fear. Elevated on their individual platforms, representing the myriad species of the conflux, the delegates leaned forward, their varied physiologies betraying a uniform tension. Ambassador Kelsar, his crystalline carapace shimmering faintly as he shifted, brought a clawed appendage to his mandibles, a gesture of profound unease among his people. His species, the Zalosians, rarely exhibited such overt displays, yet the data streaming from the outer sectors had eroded even their stoic resolve. Before them, projected onto the central holographic plinth, was an image. It depicted not a grand armada nor a terrifying weapon, but a single, ungainly vessel. Its design was crude, blocky, and remarkably inefficient. Yet it was the origin of this vessel and the species that piloted it that seized the conflux with an icy dread. "The reports from the Vorlagen observation posts are inconsistent," began Elder Cathar, his resonating voice, usually a balm, now rasped with a tremor. Cathar, a being of pure energy contained within a semi-corporeal light matrix, had presided over the conflux for cycles beyond count. His light flickered, an almost imperceptible sign of his distress. "They claim a rapid expansion, unexpected technological leaps, and an unpredictability that defies our established models of emerging civilizations. Their primary orbital constructs, observed for only a handful of their local cycles, now show an energy signature indicative of advanced warp field generation, albeit a crude one." Ambassador Vreen, a serpentine being from the marsh worlds, hissed softly, her multifaceted eyes swiveling to encompass the chamber. "Crude, Elder. We sold them those designs. We provided them with the schematics for what we considered obsolete, barely functional warp cores as part of the sector stabilization initiative. The pact was clear. Limited access to FTL, controlled expansion within their home system, a buffer against the Zalosian fringe, and no threat to established conflux routes. We offered them rusted warships, barely held together by our discarded fusion reactors, barely capable of interstellar transit. Bargain bin cast-offs." Her voice, usually smooth and hypnotic, was sharp with indignation. "They were intended to be a localized, easily contained proxy force, nothing more. A species whose own internal conflicts nearly annihilated them just centuries ago. They were barely spacefaring." A low murmur rippled through the chamber. The Sector Stabilization Initiative, a term used to describe the conflux's strategic distribution of dated technology to nascent civilizations, fostering controlled growth and preventing disruptive power vacuums. It was a well-honed diplomatic tool, a means to shape emergent species to the conflux's will, ensuring stability and preventing the rise of unforeseen competitors. The humans, as they called themselves, were one such recipient. Their star system on the distant fringe was a strategic location, bordering the disputed Zalosian buffer zone. Their internal conflicts had left them technologically stunted, their planetary resources depleted. The conflux had seen an opportunity, uplift them with just enough capability to defend their borders, but not enough to ever challenge the established order. The rusted warships Vreen mentioned were indeed cast-offs, ancient models from a forgotten war, their weapon systems largely inert, their warp drives inefficient and prone to catastrophic failure. They were meant to impress, to deter, but never to truly project power. Kelsar finally spoke, his voice a low, resonant thrum that vibrated through the chamber. "The Vorlagen reports, Elder, suggest otherwise. Their scouts, disguised as resource prospectors, observed one of these rusted warships engaging a Cathar Corsair patrol along the disputed border. The Corsairs, as we know, are equipped with phase disruptors and advanced particle cannons. Yet the human vessel, despite its archaic hull plating, endured the initial volley. And then..." Kelsar paused, his mandibles clicking with an audible tremor. "And then it retaliated. Not with the energy projectors we provided, nor the sluggish kinetic drivers. It deployed a weapon as yet unidentified that created a localized energy field, destabilizing the Corsairs' shields and causing critical system failures. The Cathar vessels were disabled, not destroyed. And the human vessel then offered assistance. Repair schematics, medical supplies, even fuel, to their aggressors." A stunned silence descended upon the chamber. The concept was alien, almost perverse. To disable an enemy and then to offer aid? It defied every known strategy of engagement, every logical calculus of conflict. It was an act of profound, unsettling paradox. Assistance, Vreen's hiss sharpened to a note of disbelief. To pirates, to those who sought to pillage their resources, this is not logic, Elder, this is madness, or a new form of deception. The Vorlagians observed no deception, Kelsar countered, his voice steadying. Their analysis of the human vessel's energy signature during the engagement indicated a sudden, massive surge in power output, far exceeding the design parameters of the original warp core we provided. It was as if the core itself was operating at efficiencies previously deemed impossible, or that they had installed a completely different, far more powerful reactor system. Cathar's light matrix pulsed rapidly. Impossible. Our monitoring protocols were rigorous. Every system, every energy signature, every technological blueprint we provided was meticulously cataloged and tracked. Their planetary output, their industrial capacity, their material sciences, all were within the expected parameters of a burgeoning but constrained species. There should be no avenue for such development, certainly not at this rate, and certainly not in secret. Perhaps, Ambassador Siller, a gossamer being of interwoven light and thought strands, projected telepathically into the collective consciousness of the chamber, her presence a shimmering cascade of iridescent light. We have fundamentally misunderstood their nature. Their internal conflicts, their history of self-destruction, perhaps these were not weaknesses but catalysts, a forge that tempered them in ways we in our long peace cannot comprehend. Siller's species, the Lumina, were observers, philosophers, their insights often profound, yet rarely prescriptive. Their words, however, carried weight. Catalysts for what, Siller? Vreen demanded, her eyes narrowed. For building superior weaponry from rusted scrap, for defying the very laws of physics we assumed bounded their capabilities, for offering aid to those who attacked them. For survival, perhaps, Siller projected, her light rippling. And perhaps for innovation born of desperation, a resourcefulness that finds solutions where none are logically possible. We saw their self-destruction, but we did not fully comprehend their capacity for rebuilding. We provided them with limitations, but perhaps they saw them as challenges, as problems to be solved. The elder Cathar, his light now dimming slightly in reflection, brought a tendril of pure energy to his central core. The Cathar Corsairs confirmed the assistance. They reported advanced medical technologies, far beyond anything we gave them, and sophisticated repair drones that seamlessly integrated with their damaged systems. The human crew, they reported, communicated with a disarming politeness, inquiring about their well-being, their purpose in the disputed zone, and even offered navigation data for safer passage. This detail sent a fresh wave of unease through the delegates. Politeness? Concern? These were not the characteristics of a nascent, aggressive species, nor were they the traits of a proxy force. It was an utterly unexpected pattern of behavior. It was the behavior of a superior force, so confident in its power that it could afford to be magnanimous, or so morally alien that its motivations were beyond the conflux's grasp. "We must send a diplomatic envoy," Kelsar stated, breaking the silence, his voice firm. "We must ascertain their true capabilities, their intentions, and the nature of their technological development. This unilateral evolution of critical systems, the modification of conflux-provided technology beyond its intended parameters, it constitutes a breach of the sector stabilization initiative. A serious breach. A breach we may be ill-equipped to enforce," Vreen muttered, her scales bristling. "If their rusted warships can disable Cathar Corsairs, what could they do to our standard patrols? What have they truly built in the shadows of their home system?" The question hung heavy, unanswered in the luminescent air. The conflux, for all its technological prowess, had grown comfortable in its dominance. The prospect of an unforeseen, rapidly evolving competitor, especially one it had unwittingly nurtured, was profoundly unsettling. The underestimation had been absolute. The consequences, they were now beginning to realize, could be catastrophic. The decision was made. A diplomatic mission would be dispatched. Not a grand armada for fear of provoking an unknown power, but a single advanced conflux diplomatic vessel, the stellar emissary under the command of Ambassador Vreen, accompanied by Elder Cathar's most trusted advisor, the young Lumina acolyte, Ilara. The task was fraught with peril, but necessity was absolute. They had to understand. They had to know what they had inadvertently unleashed. The journey to the Sol system was protracted, spanning numerous cycles of the stellar emissary's advanced warp drive. The ship, a marvel of conflux engineering, moved through the void with an ethereal grace, its crystalline hull absorbing stray stellar radiation and converting it into silent energy. Inside, the delegation was a microcosm of the conflux's anxieties. Ambassador Vreen, her natural impatience amplified by the unknown, constantly reviewed sensor readings, cross-referencing ancient data on human civilization with the fragmented, alarming reports from the Vorlagen scouts. Ilara, the Lumina acolyte, remained in a meditative state, her light strands shifting in complex patterns, absorbing and processing the vast data streams, seeking patterns, seeking understanding beyond the purely logical. Their industrial output continues to accelerate, Vreen hissed, a projection of human planetary energy signatures blooming before them. Their primary manufacturing facilities, which we cataloged as basic orbital foundries, are now showing power outputs consistent with advanced antimatter containment fields. This is not simple modification, Ilara. This is foundational rebuilding. Ilara's voice, a soft, resonant hum, responded from her meditative state. Indeed, Ambassador, the underlying patterns suggest a rapid, iterative development cycle. They do not merely improve upon existing designs, they fundamentally re-engineer the principles. The data from the Cathar Corsair's damaged systems, which we meticulously analyzed, indicates the weapon that disabled them was not a weapon in the conventional sense, but a highly localized, high-frequency graviton field generator. It did not destroy, it merely interfered, disrupting the structural integrity of the energy shields and dampening the internal power conduits. A precision instrument designed for non-lethal disablement. Vreen's multifaceted eyes narrowed further. Non-lethal disablement? To an aggressive pirate force? That borders on absurd. What strategic advantage is there in merely disabling an enemy, to be captured, to be repaired and sent on their way? Perhaps, Ilara mused, her light patterns shifting to reflect a complex philosophical concept. The strategic advantage lies not in destruction, but in deterrence. In demonstrating overwhelming capability without resorting to annihilation. It preserves resources, prevents escalation, and potentially converts adversaries. Converts adversaries? Vreen scoffed. The Cathar are a parasitic species. They understand only strength and weakness, acquisition and loss. They do not convert. They are suppressed or they are eradicated. Perhaps, Ambassador, their understanding is limited by their own experiences, Ilara suggested, her tone gentle but firm. The humans, by their own historical accounts, have experienced repeated cycles of near self-eradication. This may have instilled in them a unique perspective on conflict resolution, a profound aversion to annihilation, even of their perceived enemies. As the stellar emissary finally entered the Sol system, the vastness of human development became undeniably clear. Not a single rusted warship was in sight. Instead, a sprawling network of orbital habitats, industrial platforms, and research stations glittered around their primary world, Earth. They were not aesthetically uniform like conflux installations, but rather a patchwork, a mosaic of designs that spoke of diverse origins and rapid adaptation. What struck Vreen most profoundly was the sheer scale. Not just the number, but the volume, the constant hum of activity, the evident prosperity. The system teemed with life, with purpose. Their primary world, it pulses with a rejuvenating energy signature, Ilara observed, her light brightening. The atmospheric readings indicate a rapid reversal of industrial pollution. The biospheres we once classified as degraded are now thriving. Their population, which we estimated to be in decline, has stabilized and is now experiencing cautious growth. They have healed their home, Ambassador, in a remarkably short span of time. A small, sleek human vessel, clearly designed for diplomatic interaction, approached the stellar emissary. It was not the blocky, utilitarian design of the rusted warships. It was elegant, functional, and surprisingly advanced. Its hull shimmered with an active stealth field, only deactivating as it drew near. A voice, modulated and calm, emanated from the human vessel. "Greetings, Conflux Emissary. This is human liaison vessel Voyager 7. We welcome you to the Sol system. Our representatives await your arrival at the Sol Treaty Station in orbit around Earth. Please transmit your docking protocols." Vreen felt a surge of professional surprise. Their language, which the Conflux had taught them through rudimentary AI interfaces, was now spoken with flawless cadence and complex grammatical structures. And the tone, it was not deferential nor aggressive. It was simply confident. The docking procedure was efficient. The Sol Treaty Station, a vast, toroidal structure, was a testament to human engineering. Its inner ring was a verdant parkland, complete with artificial suns and flowing water, providing a profound contrast to the sterile efficiency of Conflux stations. The Conflux delegation, Vreen, Ilara, and their security retinue disembarked onto a smoothly polished landing pad. Waiting for them were two humans. One, a female, wore a simple, functional uniform. Her gaze was direct, intelligent, and held no trace of either fear or subservience. The other, a male, was older, his face etched with experience, his eyes possessing a quiet depth. He wore civilian attire. "Welcome, Conflux delegation," the female human stated, her voice clear and resonant. "I am Commander Aris Thorne, head of Sol System Diplomatic Corps. This is Director Elias Vance, head of the Human Interstellar Authority." Vreen, regaining her composure, extended a diplomatic tendril, a traditional gesture of greeting among her people. "Ambassador Vreen of the Conflux, and this is Acolyte Ilara of the Lumina. We are here to understand your recent developments." Director Vance offered a slight, almost imperceptible nod. "We anticipated your visit, Ambassador. The Conflux's interest in our evolution is understandable. Please follow us. We have prepared accommodations and a presentation." The journey through the Sol Treaty Station was an education. The technology was ubiquitous, seamlessly integrated into the environment. Advanced sensor arrays hummed softly behind decorative wall panels. Energy conduits glowed with a barely contained power. And everywhere there was a sense of purpose, of intelligent design, not merely for efficiency, but for sustainability for life itself. The station felt alive, not merely functional. They were led to a spacious conference chamber. The viewport offered a breathtaking vista of Earth, a vibrant blue and green jewel, ringed by a delicate filigree of orbital infrastructure. The humans offered nutrient paste and purified water basic provisions, yet presented with a quiet dignity. "Ambassador Vreen," Director Vance began, his voice calm, "we understand your concerns regarding our deviation from the parameters of the Sector Stabilization Initiative. We are prepared to address them." Vreen, still grappling with the sheer scale of what she had witnessed, decided to cut directly to the core of the issue. "Director Vance, the Conflux provided your species with limited, antiquated technology, specifically the designs for basic warp cores and rudimentary hull plating, alongside instructions for their construction. These were intended to provide you with basic defensive capabilities within your home system, not to enable intersystem travel, and certainly not to engage and disable Conflux-affiliated vessels. Your recent actions and the observed advancements constitute a grave breach of our agreement." Director Vance listened patiently, his expression unreadable. Commander Thorne stood silently beside him, her posture attentive. "Ambassador," Vance replied, his voice still measured, "the Conflux provided us with schematics, yes, and we are profoundly grateful for the initial assistance. At the time, our civilization was indeed at a precipice. The rusted warships you provided, or rather the designs for them, were indeed our first foray into meaningful interstellar travel. They allowed us to explore the immediate vicinity of our star, to establish orbital outposts, and to begin the long process of healing our ravaged home world." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the delegation. "However, the designs, while providing a framework, were inefficient. Our engineers, driven by a profound need for survivability and resource optimization, found numerous avenues for improvement. The warp core designs, for instance, were extraordinarily wasteful of energy. We re-engineered the containment fields, optimized the plasma injectors, and developed new, more stable quantum entanglement conduits to achieve significantly higher output with far less fuel consumption. The rusted warships you refer to were merely the prototypes for our initial independent exploration. They were not intended for combat. The encounter with the Cathar Corsairs was an unfortunate accident, a defensive maneuver by one of our exploratory survey vessels, Dauntless One, which was mapping a new asteroid belt for potential mineral extraction." "An accident?" Vreen scoffed. "And the weapon that disabled the Corsairs, you claim it was not a weapon but a graviton field generator. You developed such a sophisticated device in secret, from antiquated schematics, in a matter of a few cycles." "Ambassador, necessity is a potent mother of invention," Thorne interjected, her voice clear and confident. "When we realized the inherent vulnerabilities of the Conflux-provided designs, our scientific community initiated a full-spectrum reevaluation. The graviton field generator was developed as a non-lethal defense mechanism. Our history has shown us the catastrophic consequences of kinetic and energy-based weaponry. We sought a way to neutralize threats without inflicting irreparable harm. The designs were not secret, Ambassador. They were simply our natural progression, our engineers' solutions to the problems presented by the Conflux's rusted warships. We did not believe we were bound to remain technologically stagnant. Alara, who had been observing the humans with intense focus, projected a thought into Vreen's mind. Their reasoning is consistent. Their historical data supports this aversion to lethal force where alternatives exist. Their drive for efficiency, born from resource scarcity, also aligns. Vreen, however, was not easily mollified. You claim to have re-engineered fundamental principles, Ambassador. That requires scientific breakthroughs of a magnitude that typically takes millennia, even for advanced species. And you did this, isolated on your fringe world with limited resources. We find this difficult to believe. Director Vance finally allowed himself a small, almost imperceptible smile. Ambassador, perhaps you underestimate the human capacity for adaptive problem-solving. We have a saying, give a human a problem and they will find a way even if it breaks all the rules. We found the Conflux's rules, as presented in your technology, to be limiting. We sought to expand them. He then gestured to a large holographic projector in the center of the room. We understand that seeing is believing. We have prepared a demonstration, not of our weapons, but of our engineering philosophy. We would like to show you how we truly rebuilt those rusted warships. The holographic display sprang to life. It showed, in meticulous detail, a cross-section of one of the original Conflux-provided warp cores. Next to it, slowly assembling itself from shimmering light, was the human-modified version. The differences were stark. The Conflux core was a behemoth of redundant systems, heavy shielding, and inefficient plasma conduits. The human version was compact, elegant, its internal architecture a lattice of supercooled superconductors, quantum-entangled energy pathways, and a precisely calibrated antimatter containment field that recycled almost all waste energy. It was a masterpiece of efficiency, a symphony of interconnected systems. We realized, Thorne explained, her voice gaining a quiet pride, that the original Conflux core designs focused on brute force containment and reaction. We focused on precise energy manipulation and recycling. We repurposed existing elements, discovered new applications for known materials, and yes, developed entirely new principles of energy transmission and conversion. For example, the waste heat, which the Conflux cores simply radiated, we channeled into secondary kinetic energy converters, creating auxiliary power for life support and non-critical systems. The rusted warships became platforms for experimentation, for radical redesign, not merely for repair. Vreen stared at the projections, her multifaceted eyes widening with dawning comprehension, then fear. This was not merely improvement. This was a paradigm shift. They had taken crude tools and forged them into something entirely new, something fundamentally superior. They had not just fixed the rust. They had built a new machine inside the old shell. The Conflux had a policy, Vreen said, her voice barely a hiss, of limiting access to fundamental physics knowledge, of carefully doling out technological advancements. How did you discover these principles? Vance met her gaze directly. Ambassador, knowledge once observed cannot be entirely suppressed. The very designs you gave us, however limited, contained embedded principles of warp theory, of energy manipulation. Our scientists, once given a glimpse, pursued these avenues with relentless curiosity. We did not need you to teach us everything. We needed only a starting point, and a desperate need to survive. We found solutions within the inherent inefficiencies of your own designs. We looked at what was there and we asked, how can we make this better? The presentation continued. They showed how they had re-engineered the outdated Conflux communication arrays into quantum entanglement communicators, capable of instantaneous, secure transmissions across vast interstellar distances. They demonstrated their advanced material sciences, which allowed them to forge lighter, stronger, and self-repairing hull plating from common elements. They even revealed their medical advancements, born from their own history of pandemics and bioweaponry, capable of regenerating complex tissues and curing diseases considered incurable by Conflux Me. Dissing. Each revelation was a hammer blow to Vreen's preconceived notions, to the Conflux's carefully constructed hierarchy of knowledge and power. They had not merely caught up. They had surpassed in some critical areas the very species that sought to control them. And they had done it not through aggression, but through ingenuity, born of necessity and a deep-seated drive for self-improvement. The philosophical reflections of Alara, once seeming abstract, now echoed with chilling accuracy. "We did not seek to violate any agreement, Ambassador," Vance concluded, his voice soft but firm. "We sought only to survive, to thrive, and to build a future for our species. We took the rusted warships you provided and we made them viable. We made them our own, and in doing so we found our place among the stars." A heavy silence fell in the chamber. Vreen's mind reeled. They had sold them rusted warships, thinking they were giving them the keys to a cage. Instead, the humans had melted down the rust, reforged the metal, and built engines of unimagined power. They had used the very limitations imposed upon them as a springboard for unprecedented advancement. Alara, her light matrix glowing with a vibrant intensity, finally spoke aloud. "Ambassador, they have not breached the spirit of the initiative. They have simply excelled beyond our most pessimistic predictions. They have taken what was given and through sheer ingenuity made it something new, something formidable. We are confronted not by defiance, but by an unexpected and profound demonstration of capability." Vreen could only nod, her tendrils drooping in a rare display of concession. The conflux in its arrogance had planted a seed in barren soil, expecting a stunted sapling. Instead, they had nurtured a forest, vibrant and rapidly growing, overshadowing the very giants who thought they controlled the light. The initial underestimation was now a gaping wound in the conflux's self-perception. The humans were not aggressive, not deceitful. They were simply human. And that, in itself, was a revelation more terrifying and more awe-inspiring than any weapon. The return journey of the stellar emissary to Eldoria Prime was conducted in a profound, unsettling quietude. Ambassador Vreen, stripped of her initial indignation and now burdened by a terrifying new understanding, communicated only in clipped, necessary exchanges. Alara, however, seemed to radiate a newfound light, her philosophical curiosity ignited by the human encounter. The data they carried back to the conflux was meticulously compiled, cross-referenced, and verified, yet still felt unbelievable in its implications. Upon their arrival, the Eldoria Prime Council chamber was, if anything, even more tense than before. The news of the stellar emissary's return had spread, and with it, a pervasive anxiety that had settled over the conflux. Elder Cathar, his light matrix pulsing with suppressed agitation, awaited their report. "Ambassador Vreen, Acolyte Alara," Cathar's voice resonated, devoid of its usual warmth. "The conflux awaits your findings. Be direct. What have the humans become?" Vreen, stepping forward, projected the collected data onto the central plinth. The holographic display showed not just the detailed engineering schematics, but also cultural reports, economic projections, and even philosophical treatises obtained from the humans. "Elder Cathar, esteemed delegates," Vreen began, her voice steady despite the internal turmoil. "The humans have not merely developed beyond our expectations, they have redefined them. The rusted warships we provided were not merely repaired, they were fundamentally re-engineered. Their warp cores, once inefficient and unstable, are now capable of achieving jump velocities far exceeding our standard patrol vessels, with a fraction of the fuel consumption. Their hull plating, originally crude alloys, now utilizes self-regenerating nanocomposite materials. Their energy systems, once reliant on simple fusion, now tap into zero-point energy fields, providing virtually limitless power." A murmur, louder and more agitated than before, swept through the chamber. The delegates, their diverse physiologies twitching with disbelief, strained to process the implications. Zero-point energy? Self-regenerating hulls? These were technologies reserved for the most advanced, ancient species of the conflux, and even then often in theoretical application rather than widespread deployment. "They did not breach the sector stabilization initiative through aggression or deceit," Alara interjected, her light brightening, drawing all eyes to her. "They breached it through ingenuity, through a relentless pursuit of efficiency and resilience born from their own history of near self-annihilation. Their engineers observed our limitations and perceived them as problems to be solved. Their core philosophy, as we ascertained, centers on adaptation, optimizati. On and the profound value of life, even the life of their adversaries. The Cathar Corsair incident," Vreen continued, "was, as they claimed, a defensive maneuver. The graviton field generator they deployed was designed for non-lethal disablement. Their subsequent offer of aid was genuine. They do not seek conquest. They seek understanding and mutual prosperity, so long as their own sovereignty is respected. So they claim, Ambassador Kelsar interjected, his voice skeptical. Such magnanimity from a species that until recently was tearing itself apart, it strains credulity, Ambassador. Their history is complex, Kelsar, Alara countered, her light pulsing with intensity. Their conflicts, while devastating, were often followed by periods of rapid philosophical and technological introspection. They learned from their mistakes. They developed a profound aversion to mass destruction and a deep respect for restorative justice. They view resources not as something to be plundered, but as something to be managed and, if necessary, regenerated. Their primary world, Earth, is a testament to this. It was once ecologically devastated. It is now a thriving biosphere restored by their own hands. The holographic projection shifted, displaying images of Earth, vibrant, alive, teeming with rejuvenated life. Then it showed images of human orbital habitats, not sterile structures but living ecosystems, integrated with vast solar arrays and sophisticated atmospheric processors. Their entire system, once sparsely populated, now teemed with sustainable industry and research. They have developed advanced medical technologies that can regenerate complex tissues and cure diseases considered terminal by conflux standards, Vreen added, a new, unsettling detail. Their communication systems utilize quantum entanglement, providing instantaneous, secure interstellar communication. Their computational capabilities far exceed our own, allowing for rapid data processing and predictive modeling that borders on prescience. The elder Cathar finally rose, his light matrix flaring with a raw, powerful energy. So we gave them rusted warships, thinking to cage them, and they have forged them into instruments of power that rival our own. We sought to limit their potential, and they have expanded it beyond our wildest imaginings. We sought to control them, and they have simply outgrown us. What then is our position? What is the status of the conflux in the face of such a species? Silence, a heavy, profound silence. The delegates, once arrogant in their perceived superiority, now shifted uneasily on their platforms. The reality of their colossal misjudgment had settled like a shroud. They do not project aggression, Alara stated, her voice resonating with conviction. They project resilience, ingenuity, and a profound, almost alien sense of ethical responsibility. They offered the conflux not defiance but an invitation to diplomacy, to mutual understanding, and to shared progress. An invitation we are now in no position to refuse, Vreen concluded, her tendrils drooping in resignation. We underestimated them in every conceivable way. We feared their potential for aggression but failed to grasp their capacity for innovation. We feared their chaos but underestimated their drive for order and restoration. They are not a threat, Elder, but a revelation, a mirror reflecting our own stagnation. Cathar's light matrix pulsed slowly, methodically. Then we must change our approach. We must engage them not as subjects but as equals, perhaps even as mentors. The word hung in the air, a profound admission from the leader of the ancient conflux. The idea of the conflux, the arbiter of galactic order learning from a newly emergent species, was revolutionary, almost heretical. Yet the evidence presented was irrefutable. The conflux, a civilization built on millennia of slow, deliberate progress, had been shocked awake by the blinding speed of human evolution. Their careful plans, their nuanced strategies for galactic control, had been rendered obsolete by a species that simply refused to be constrained by their expectations. They had sold them rusted warships, and now they were faced with the undeniable truth. The humans had used those very scraps to build something far greater, something that now commanded respect and perhaps even awe. The implications rippled outwards. Not only had humans bypassed conflux technological superiority, but their ethical framework, their approach to conflict, and their deep-seated drive for sustainable advancement presented a stark contrast to the conflux's own, often pragmatic and self-serving, policies. The philosophical debate that followed in the Conflux Council was long and arduous, a fundamental reevaluation of their place in the galaxy. Ultimately, under the guidance of Elder Cathar and the insightful interpretations of Alara, the Conflux chose a path of genuine engagement. A formal diplomatic delegation, much larger and more prestigious than the reconnaissance mission, was dispatched to the Sol system. It included leading scientists, cultural emissaries, and even members of the military high command, tasked not with asserting dominance, but with fostering genuine collaboration. The subsequent cycles of diplomatic exchange between the conflux and humanity were transformative. The initial fear and suspicion on the conflux side slowly gave way to respect, and then a cautious admiration. Human scientists, with their rapid prototyping and iterative design processes, quickly integrated into conflux research initiatives, providing startling insights into ancient problems. Human medical technology, particularly their regenerative therapies, revolutionized conflux healthcare. Their approach to resource management and ecological restoration became a model for species across the conflux struggling with planetary degradation. Humans, in turn, readily shared their knowledge, not with arrogance, but with a quiet enthusiasm. They were eager to learn from the conflux's millennia of accumulated wisdom, absorbing historical data, diplomatic strategies, and the intricate cultural nuances of countless species. They integrated conflux philosophical concepts into their own, enriching their understanding of the wider galaxy. One particular point of profound fascination for the conflux was humanity's Project Phoenix. After the initial diplomatic breakthrough, humans revealed that the rusted warships were not merely re-engineered, but were being converted into something else entirely. The ships, once symbols of conflux condescension, were now becoming something new, something that defied easy categorization. Director Vance, during a joint conflux human scientific symposium on the Sol Treaty Station, explained the concept. When the conflux provided us with those initial designs, we realized that the inherent inefficiencies meant they were not sustainable for long-term interstellar exploration. They were, in essence, throwaway vessels. However, we saw potential in their basic chassis. We stripped them down, reinforced their frameworks, and integrated our new power systems and material sciences. We did not want to discard what we had been given. We wanted to transform it. Holographic projections of the Phoenix project filled the chamber. The former rusted warships were no longer vessels of war or even exploration. They were vast, mobile habitats, capable of sustained interstellar transit, designed not for conquest but for the peaceful settlement of new worlds. Each vessel, now renamed a Genesis Ark, contained self-sustaining biospheres, advanced terraforming arrays, and a full complement of scientific instruments. They were instruments of life, not death. We recognized that while we had healed Earth, Commander Thorne elaborated, many other worlds within the conflux, and indeed within the uncharted regions, suffered from ecological devastation, or were simply barren. These Genesis arcs are designed to be seeds of life, capable of establishing new, thriving biospheres on suitable planets, utilizing our advanced terraforming and ecological restoration technologies. They are our way of giving back, of sharing the solutions we found for our own world with the galaxy at large. The conflux delegates, once dismissive of human ethics, now found themselves humbled. They had thought humans were pragmatic, even ruthless. Instead, they discovered a species driven by a deep sense of responsibility, not just to their own, but to life itself. They had built ships of peace and regeneration from the very bones of obsolete war. They had, quite literally, taken rusted warships and made them kneel before the promise of new life. This profound revelation culminated in a historic assembly on Eldoria Prime, not in the hushed, anxious tones of fear, but in a celebratory atmosphere of genuine respect. Elder Cathar, now a staunch advocate for human integration into the conflux, stood before the unified assembly. For cycles beyond count, Cathar's voice boomed, amplified through the chamber, the conflux has seen itself as the shepherd of nascent civilizations, the arbiter of galactic order. We believed we held the ultimate wisdom, the highest technological achievements. We believed we knew the path of progress. He paused, his light matrix pulsing with quiet humility. We were wrong. We believed we gifted them rusted warships as a cage. They saw them as a challenge. They saw them as a canvas. And on that canvas, they painted a future we could not have envisioned. A ripple of assent, not of fear, but of understanding, went through the chamber. Vreen, observing from her platform, felt a strange sense of catharsis. The initial indignance had been replaced by a deep respect, even a growing affection, for this unpredictable, extraordinary species. Humanity, Cathar continued, has demonstrated not just unparalleled ingenuity, but also an ethical framework, a dedication to life and restoration, that challenges the very foundations of our established order. They have shown us that true progress is not merely about accumulating power, but about nurturing possibility. They have offered us not just their technology, but their philosophy, their spirit of boundless potential. It was at this moment, during the most significant conflux assembly in recent memory, that the unthinkable occurred. A sudden, jarring dissonance rippled through the chamber. The ambient light of the Eldoria Prime fungi flickered erratically. The ancient thought amplifiers, usually a steady hum, sputtered with static. A single, unified alarm blared, piercing the celebratory mood. On the central plinth, the holographic projection of the Sol Treaty Station, which had been displaying peaceful images, dissolved into chaotic interference. Then, it resolved into a new image, one that sent a chill through every delegate present, a primal fear awakening in their ancient hearts. It was a celestial map, and overlaid on it, stretching across an unimaginable expanse of uncharted space beyond the known conflux borders, was a single monstrous anomaly. A rift in spacetime itself, swirling with dark energy emanating an ancient, almost primordial terror. It was not a natural phenomenon. It was too precise, too geometric, too vast. Elder Cathar, Ambassador Kelsar's voice was a guttural cry. Our outer perimeter sensor nets, they are screaming, a massive energy signature emerging from beyond the galactic rim. It is unlike anything we have ever detected. What is this? Vreen hissed, her multifaceted eyes fixed on the anomaly, a growing dread seizing her. Ilara, however, her light matrix glowing with an almost frantic energy, projected a thought directly into Cathar's mind. Elder, this is not new. The human computational models, their predictive algorithms, they spoke of this possibility. They warned us. Cathar, momentarily stunned, stared at Ilara. Warned us of what? Before Ilara could elaborate, the central plinth flickered again, and a new, smaller projection appeared within the vast anomaly. It was a single, almost infinitesimally small point of light. A signal. It's a beacon, Ilara announced, her voice filled with a strange mix of terror and awe. An ancient, almost forgotten frequency. It's a distress signal, but not from any known species. It's from before, from the time of the first ones, the mythical architects of the cosmos. A collective gasp went through the conflux delegates. The first ones. A legend, a myth, whispered in the deepest archives of galactic history. Beings of unimaginable power said to have seeded life across the galaxy, then vanished without a trace, leaving behind only tantalizing, often incomprehensible ruins. The humans, their predictive algorithms, their deep learning networks, they analyzed the background radiation from the anomaly, Ilara explained, her words tumbling out rapidly. They found subtle, rhythmic patterns within the interference. A code, a message. It's a warning, Elder. A warning of an ancient, cosmic threat, something that predates the conflux, something that transcends our understanding of war, of survival. The rift pulsed, a dark, hungry aperture in the fabric of reality. And from within it, faint at first, then growing stronger, came a resonating hum. A sound that vibrated not just in the air, but in the very bones of the delegates. It was the sound of something vast, ancient, and utterly malevolent stirring. They have been monitoring it for centuries, Elder, Ilara continued, her voice urgent. Their advanced observational outposts, which we dismissed as over-engineered, were designed specifically to detect these deep space anomalies. They knew. They understood the implications of the anomaly. They were building the Genesis arcs not just for colonization, but as a safeguard, a last resort, a means to preserve life should this threat ever fully manifest. The chamber fell silent once more, but this time it was not the silence of fear, but of profound existential dread. The rusted warships, transformed into Genesis arcs, no longer seemed an extravagant demonstration of ingenuity. They were a prescient act of survival. Humanity, in its quiet, methodical way, had foreseen a threat that the conflux, in its complacency, had never even considered. Elder Cathar looked from the terrifying anomaly to the projections of the Genesis arcs, then to Ilara, and finally to the space where Vreen stood, now leaning forward, her face a mask of dawning horror. They sold us rusted warships, Vreen whispered, the words echoing in the sudden, terrible silence of the chamber, and we dismissed them. Now we kneel before them, not in subjugation but in desperate hope. The humming from the rift intensified. The conflux, once secure in its dominance, now stood at the precipice of an unimaginable cosmic conflict, a threat that dwarfed all previous concerns. Their advanced technology, their vast fleets, their diplomatic prowess, it all suddenly seemed woefully inadequate. But there was a new hope. A young species once dismissed had seen what they could not. A species that had learned to transform rust into rebirth, conflict into collaboration, and limitations into unbounded potential. The Genesis arcs, the vessels born from the very scrap they had been given, They were not just colonizers, they were the galaxy's potential salvation. They were a testament to the fact that when faced with the greatest darkness, humanity did not just fight, it found a way to carry the light. The true battle was not against a rogue species or an emerging power. It was against an ancient darkness, and the conflux, now united with humanity, had a fighting chance. And it was all thanks to a species that saw a rusted warship and dared to dream of something more. The final, horrifying twist was not about humans, but about the universe itself, and humanity was now the unlikely vanguard.